Hello, hello, hello. I will wait for those of us that are coming over from LinkedIn. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Listen, I am super excited about today's lunch and learn. We're going to be talking about acing that interview today. So I know we are showing up live. So we're going to wait for some of our friends to come on over from LinkedIn. They're going to come in over from LinkedIn and we'll do it that way. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this party started. All right. So, again, we're talking about ace that interview today, acing that interview. So, for those of you that are watching live and or the replay, I want to know where you are coming in from. If you could just share your city, state, and or country, let me know who is in the room. Okay. Also want to make sure that I know who is joining us from what career paths you all are joining us from. Okay. So as you all join in, I want to know about your career path. That typically helps me figure out how I can um how I can share what I need to share. So again, we are waiting for our LinkedIn. All right, everyone. So, a little bit about me. So, I am the lead HR and career strategist at Career Image Solutions, and I have over 15 years of experience doing all things hiring in the world of hiring and firing. So, I know a little bit about interviews. I started Career Image Solutions years ago. And one of the reasons why I started this company is because I was working in HR and I saw directly the need that was in the marketplace. There were so many people who I knew could do the job, but unfortunately, maybe their resume wasn't on par or they just didn't know how to interview, right? So, what I recognized quickly in helping others do their resumes is what good is the resume if somebody doesn't know what they want to do? And what good is the resume if someone doesn't necessarily know how to interview? So fast forward, what ended up happening is that we ended up offering hello, hello. Oh, good. I'm glad you could join here. No problem. So, what ended up happening is that fast forward, our team started offering recruitment services. And I'm telling you what, we started recruiting for different positions. And what we realized is that, again, now we were facing so many different candidates who were amazing on paper, but they just couldn't get past the interview. So, here we are today. This has been, private, quiet sessions that we've been having behind the scenes as a team to just talk about how can we help those that are in today's job market with just some tips that they can use to optimize their interview so that at least they are called back. Listen, not everybody is going to be selected, right? I truly believe that what God has for you is going to be for you, but it is up to us to be properly positioned to have be able to be properly positioned for the things that we've been praying for. So if we know that we are actively praying for a new job, then it is up to us to ensure that we are properly skilled and in position, so that way when we are called for the interview, we are ready. Gone are the days where people are just saying, oh, that's a good person, I can vouch for that person. Even those you vouch for, if they go in and bomb the interview, it still will be a wrap. It will not go well, right? People are still looking for those who know how to interview well. So again, for those of you that are watching live and or the replay, I do want to know where you are streaming in from. If you can let me know the city, state, but also I would like to know if you have been interviewing, if you've gone on an in-person interview and or a final interview in the last 6 months. If you have, I just want you to go ahead and put I in the chat if you've been on an in-person interview in the last 6 months. And if you've been on a final interview, but maybe it's been virtual, right? I want you to go ahead and put F in the chat. All right. F in the chat. F in the chat. Welcome, 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 welcome. All right. So I need to know who I'm talking to. I may ask us that question again as we pivot. So again, welcome to those of you that are joining us live. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with these tips, right? Because one of the things I want to make sure that you walk away with, I want to make sure that you are walking away with practical tips that can optimize your next interview so you ace it, so you go in there and you kill it. All right. Hey, Dina, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. All right. So my first tip to ace that interview is that you have to know who you are. You got to know who you are and why you are there. Why are you there in the first place? Listen, I know that many times people have to just kind of have to just get a job sometimes. I get it. I've been there where you're applying, you're just applying just to see what you can land. But I want to caution you in that, right? Because that same energy comes across. It comes across when you're interviewing. So you want to be very clear about who you are and why you were there. And let me just kind of dig a little deeper with that, okay? When I say know who you are, I'm talking about what are the skills, strengths, and interests that you possess. You know you're going to be asked those questions anyway. Why not get prepared with that, right? So, what skills do you currently have? I'm not talking about just skills that everyone else likes you to have. I'm talking about the skills that would make you valuable for this role that you are interviewing for. So again, for those of you that are watching live, if you can go ahead in the chat, just let me know some of the career paths that you are a part of. So that way I can maybe give some examples specifically to that career path. So again, what skills do you possess? So of course, my background is HR, right? So I am not necessarily going to put that I am proficient in doing hair, right? Even though I could do braids. I know it sounds like very trivial, but I'm serious, right? You will be shocked at some of the things people bring up, right? So good. I have another HR partner in the room. So if you are applying for an HR particular role, you want to bring up skills that are pertinent to that particular field, right? So for HR, we know that interpersonal skills are important. We know that there are that mediation skills is important. Having emotional intelligence, being able to keep things confidential is important. right? So we would want to highlight those things in our interview. What strengths do you have, right? Again, if we're speaking about HR, then we also want to think about the strengths that are related to that particular career. So what are some strengths in HR that you might want to highlight? Hey, I have a strength in, project management. I'm able to take things from beginning to end, right? So you want to think about those things. Also, we want to know about your interests, right? So when you're interviewing, what interests you? What even interested you in applying to this role even in the first place, right? So again, knowing those things about yourself is going to be absolutely critical when you are going to your next interview, especially if you've been forwarded to your final interview. Okay. So again, your skills, your strengths, and your interests. You got to know who you are and why you were there. Okay. So when you are looking at the role, hopefully you won't be the person that says, oh, I was just looking for a job. Oh, hey, I'm just in between jobs. Believe it or not, there are senior professionals who have said this in interviews. So I am not making this up. Okay. But you want to know, what was it about the role that made you interested in highlight those things? So just want to do a tech check really quick, because I know that we are having our LinkedIn friends rolling on over to this live. Can you all hear me okay? Could somebody just drop an emoji if you can hear me okay? Making sure that the tech is good. Team CIS, if you are on live, I need some support. If you all can let me know that you all can hear me okay, let me know something in the chat, or drop an emoji, thumbs up, let me know that you can hear me okay. All right, I don't see anything just yet, so I will go ahead and move forward. I will move forward. So that was tip number one. Okay. Tip number one is knowing who you are and knowing why you are there. The people, okay, you could hear but could not hear on LinkedIn. All right, got it. So come on over to YouTube. Let everybody know. Come on over to YouTube, and you should be able to hear on here. Okay, you should be able to hear live on here. Well, all right. So that was tip number one. You got to know who you are and know why you are there. Okay, because again, what you embody, what you believe, really does come across in the interview. And in the interview, there are so many people we have interviewed or that I've coached, hiring professionals that I've coached. And when they're interviewing, and one of the main reasons why maybe they didn't select somebody, or why they selected one person over the other, strictly is because of confidence. And confidence is directly tied to what you believe about yourself and what you believe about why you are even applying to the role. So again, I know it sounds really trivial, but it is absolutely important. All right. So I want to know, for those of you that are watching live and even the replay, do I have any hiring officials on live right now? Any hiring officials online? I want to know, because I need you all to be my amen corner. So when I say something that's really good and you know that it's true, I need you to go ahead and say amen or something. All right. So again, if you are a hiring official, let me know who's in the room. All right. So tip number two, you want to kill your opening. What do I mean by that? When you are, it takes an average of, and statistically, right? 90 within the first 90 seconds of an interview, especially if it's in person or if it's virtual, within the first 90 seconds, the hiring officials are already determining if they want to continue listening to you. Okay, within the first 90 seconds. So for those of you that have attended any of my resume workshops before, you know that I tell you within the first 7 seconds, a experienced hiring official recruiter can tell whether or not they want to keep reading your resume within 7 seconds. Within 90 seconds of your in-person interview and or virtual interview, we can determine, already start judging. We all judge, right? We can already start determining if we want to keep listening to you. So you must kill your opening. So what do I mean by that? What is one of the most dreadful questions that are asked in an interview? Somebody tell me, what are the most dreadful questions that, people dread answering, providing a response to this question? What question am I talking about? What is that one interview question that people dread the most? Let me see if somebody says something. Oh, that is another dread. I wasn't thinking about that one. But the question that popped up was, where do you expect to be in 5 years? That is a dreadful one. But just about every interviewer asks us this question. Tell me about yourself, right? It amazes me how many working professionals still show up to interviews not prepared to answer that question. Tell me about yourself. Oh my gosh, yes. And why should we hire you? Oh my goodness. I can't stand any of them, let me tell you. But from an interviewer perspective, it tells us so much about a candidate. I hate answering the question, but I love asking it. Okay? Call me hypocritical if you want me to, if you want to. But here's why. Because when we are asking to tell you, to tell us about you, just in a, first of all, it tells us if you are succinct, if you are prepared, and it tells us, remember I told you that 90-second rule? It gives us an idea if you are actually even going to be a good fit. Let me give you a little insider scoop, okay? Many experienced interviewers and or hiring professionals have a slated set of questions that they're ready to ask you. If we don't feel like you've answered like the first three pretty good, we are shortening that interview and we are not going to conclude. Any hiring professionals on the line, in my line, or am I telling the truth? We will cut that interview short, okay? If we recognize that it's just not flowing how it needs to flow. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I have one in the room. We will, if we have 10 questions and you're not really getting to tell me about yourself. Yes, it's like, have a nice day. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye, right? And so that's why you got to kill your opening. So with tell me about yourself, it really just depends, again, on the career path that you are in. But one of the things that I like to just, that I advise some of our clients to showcase right up front, I like to say that you want to make sure that you are telling about your experience, right? Tell about your experience. You want to tell about why you are interested in a role. You want to tell things that are related to the position and show some personality. We don't need to know how many children you have. We don't need to know that you're married. We don't need to know, that why you were late for the interview. You'll catch that one later, right? All of the we don't need to know all of that. Tell us about yourself. What are you going to say about you that's going to catch my attention? Okay? And when you have mock interview, that's why I really, really encourage those of you who have not participated in a mock interview for you to do so. I'm not talking about informational interviews. I'm talking about real mock interviews where you can practice responding to some of these questions. Okay. But yes, tell me about yourself is one of the ones you have to perfect, you have to master. Okay. So again, kill your opening. So for those of you that are just joining us, the very first tip in acing your next interview is you got to know who you are and why you were there. Right. The second piece is you got to kill your opening. Okay. You got to come in strong. Listen, and for those of us that don't start off strong, there's still hope. Just make sure that your second response is fire. Okay. Because there's been many people that will come back. Again, usually we'll give you like a 3-question. Give you a 3-question try. But again, confidence is everything. All right, we're getting to some good stuff now. Y'all ready? Somebody put number 3 in the chat if you're ready. Somebody put number 3 in the chat if you're ready. All right. So the third thing to ace your interview, okay, is you want to paint yourself in the stories that you tell. Here's what I mean. We know that in most working professionals are being asked behavioral questions these days, right? Tell me about a time when. Tell me about how you will handle this, right? Those are behavioral questions, okay? When you are answering those questions, you want to answer them with you in mind, okay? Don't answer them with responses like, oh, well, if it were me, or, I think that the person should. I think that the person should handle, dealing with a disgruntled customer by blah, 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 blah. No, you want to paint yourself in your stories, right? And here's what I mean by that. So let's just say the question is, tell me, about how you would handle a disgruntled employee or customer, right? Okay. So what you, instead of saying, oh, well, I think that, the person in the role should, take a deep breath and no, what you want to reword it and say is that, well, when I have dealt with a disgruntled customer in the past, I simply X, Y, and Z. And if it's something that you don't have experience in, you still want to paint yourself in the picture. Well, you know what? I can imagine myself in that position. I can imagine myself in that position. And what I would do is, right, paint yourself in the story that you say. And yes, I see somebody else saying, don't use the same example for every question. Oh my gosh, please don't. We can tell you did not practice, you did not have a mock interview. Right? Absolutely. Do not do that, right? But again, paint yourself in these stories so that way we can begin imagining you in the role. And it's really it's subliminal, but I'm telling you it works because at the end when we debrief about the candidates, you know what we remember? We remember the stories. We remember the stories that you share. So again, do you have to do these things in interviews? Absolutely not. But what I have seen is that these are the things that really separate those that are remembered and get selected. Is that right? Is that fair? So again, paint yourself in the stories. So I want to kind of take a break here and pause. What are some questions that you all have about the interview process? Because today, our time together, I'm going to be sharing with you some tips, but I'm hoping that I could be of some service to answer any questions that you might have regarding the interview process. So go ahead and start thinking about some questions that you might have, or just some things that you might just want to know about what hiring officials are really thinking and or doing on the other end, again, from an HR point of view. Okay. All right. So while you were doing, when to follow up, you know what? Expand on that question, when to follow up. So I'll just kind of think about when to follow up after. So it depends. Nowadays, there are at least 3 layers of interviews, right? So usually there's a phone interview, right? Okay, so usually there's a phone interview, and sometimes now there's a video interview, and then there's usually an in-person interview. But there are many companies that are doing a hybrid of ways. I recently just worked with a client where all of their interviews were virtual. All of them were virtual. They had no desire to meet with anybody in person, right? So bottom line is a good rule of thumb. Hopefully you are asking questions, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but hopefully you are asking the question about when they plan on hiring. And hopefully you are asking the question about when they plan to follow up, right? So that I always encourage candidates to ask that question, because then you have a really good time frame of when to follow up, and you don't have to be that awkward person that's sending emails every day. So let me start off answering that question with what not to do. Let's just say you interviewed today is Tuesday and you're following up tomorrow. Don't do that. Don't be that person, right? And let me just tell you this. There are many hiring officials that have so much on their plate. This is no excuse. But if they say that they're going to get back to you, let's just say in 4 business days or by next week, and let's say the next week is now Wednesday, it's okay to follow up that following week. But what you don't want to do in your follow up is start to shade them like, oh, I still haven't heard from you. That is a absolute no, 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 right? So again, a week thereafter is a good gauge to follow up. Say, hey, really enjoyed, the time, my interview with you, just following up if you all have made a decision. Okay. And I'm going to share some additional tips about following up in just a moment that I think will add to your toolkit in terms of following up after the interview. Hopefully that was helpful. Are there any other questions that are coming to mind right now before I go into tip number 4 and ace in our next interview? Okay. Oh, and how often after the initial attempt? Oh, that's really good. So recently we had somebody we were recruiting for a senior role, and there was a candidate. She was very classy with hers, very classy. What she ended up doing was she followed up um, after the first week, because the timelines, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, you all, but the timelines kept getting pushed back because of some other things that were beyond our control and really beyond the organization's control as well. So what ended up happening was she followed up after the first 2 weeks every week, and then we went back and told everybody, hey, this is what's happening. Then she followed up the week thereafter, and yes, really did take that long. And then she followed up, I think it was like a week and a half after that, right? So I think a weekly cadence is okay, but again, I really want to put you in a position of power. So I would kind of revert back to them. When would be a good time to follow up with you? And I think that just puts you in a position of power, and it allows you to not be in that awkward position like, oh, did they fill the role? Sometimes they really have not filled the role. Sometimes they are still interviewing. Sometimes hiring officials are just somebody might be on vacation, so that kind of throws off the schedule for another week and a half. There's so many other things that that you got to take into consideration. But that was a fantastic, fantastic question. All right. So tip number 4. All right. So when you are thinking about when you are interviewing, okay, you want to stick it to them. You're like, Hennither, what are you talking about? You want to answer the question that is being asked. I know that sounds real basic, doesn't it? It sounds real basic. But if you were long-winded like me, okay, listen, it's okay. Long-winded crew, where y'all at? Well, who's with me, right? When you are long-winded like me, sometimes you digress, right? And you have to have notes on the side to make sure, like, wait, what was the question? You don't want to do that too often. It's okay to say that. It's like, oh, could you repeat the question? But you don't want to do that too often. You're just looking like, wait a minute, are you even actively listening here? Right? So you want to stick it to them. You want to provide the answers and or responses to the question that is being asked. Unfortunately, we had a situation recently where, oh my gosh, the candidate had tons of experience. We were so excited to speak with this candidate. But when I tell you just about every question, and it was a panel interview at that, when I tell you just about every question, it went off in about 3 different directions, and we had to kind of redirect. So when you know that somebody is, if you sense that the hiring official is saying things like, if they're saying things like, oh, well, back to the original question, that's your hint. That's your hint, hint, wink, wink for you to start listening. Okay. But here's a little tip for you. Okay. Keep a journal next to you. Right. And literally just put some keywords about the question that they're asking you. Right. So that way you can kind of refer back to it here and there to make sure that you stay on track. Here's another thing when I talk about stick it to them, right, and answering the question, is that you want to time yourself. Have your phone next to you. Okay. Put your ringer off. Right. Turn your ringer off. But you want to maybe put a timer. Try to gauge yourself that you're not talking more than 3 minutes. Okay. Some people would even say less than that. Okay. You want to make sure that you're pausing in between. 3 minutes can sometimes be even, too long, but just try to time yourself. And again, which is why I always recommend doing some type of mock interview. Mock interviews are extremely, extremely helpful. Let me share a quick story. We had someone that came to us for career strategy. And again, this candidate had tons of accolades, had been working for the same employer for about 15 years, and just decided that it was time for a change. Well, what was good for them is that they were promoted the entire time to senior roles. But what was unfortunate is that now that they were transitioning to a new career field and outside of the company that was essentially their home, they recognized that they were now interviewing with people that didn't know them, that didn't know their accolades, right? So literally, she just could not figure out, why couldn't I get the interview? Why can't I get the interview? And when we did some career strategy and mock interview sessions, what we recognized is that she was showing no personality and she was not answering the questions. She was just so nervous. She just kept going on tangents, even though she knew the thing. And we provided her with some real live, strategy on ways that she can just stick it to them. And again, one of those tips is having that journal right next to you and timing your responses. Is that helpful? Awesome. So I see another question. Should you share entrepreneurial pursuits, or is that a turnoff? You know what? Let me get back to that question, because I think that that is especially in today's job market, having a side hustle or being an entrepreneur can be a turnoff. But I would love to come back to that question in just a moment. Okay. So again, we want to talk about answering the question and answering the question directly. All right. All right. Who is ready for tip number 5? Tip number 5. Tip number 5. Okay. And we're just about wrapping up here. So get your questions together. Okay. So you want to be conversational. One of the things that I have noticed that make candidates stand out from others are those that don't sound like robots. Listen, we want to hire humans, not robots. Okay. If we wanted to hire a robot, we'll go ahead and, hire Chat GPT and, Siri and all of her cousins. Right. Even though that is like legit happening right now. That's another webinar for another day. Okay. If you all want to know more about AI and how it's affecting the job market, let me know in the chat. Okay. I'm curious if you all would like to kind of know some inside scoop on some stuff. Right. But you do want to be conversational. Okay. You want to show some personality. Gone are the days where, you have to only wear a black suit, navy blue, right? Gone are those days. Okay. Gone are those days where, nobody wants you to, you just have to be stoic in your interview. We want you to be conversational. We want you to show personality. So here's one really good tip for you. If you are interviewing and you're just like, hey, I don't really know how to be conversational because I'm just answering the questions. One of the things that you can do is to ask questions in between. Many candidates feel like they have to wait to ask questions at the end of the interview, and that is not true. Okay. So one of the things that you could do is simply I just showcased that to you. I stopped in midway and say, hey, do you have any questions? And a really good interviewer will do that, but not everybody, does that. So if they don't do that, you can maybe in between you answering a question and them asking you the next question, you can simply say, you know what, I have a follow-up question regarding that. So you were asking about how I would handle a disgruntled customer. I just wanted to know, is that something that you all deal with on a consistent basis? And how have you all handled that in the past? What advice or tips have you, right? And if you are nervous, that I'm telling you, that absolutely will help you break the ice by asking them follow-up questions and not waiting until the end. Okay. So again, be conversational, relax, take your deep breaths, right? Along the way. All right. So I see you. You said, yes, I am interested in AI training. Good stuff, right? So ask questions in between. Okay. Make it a conversation. Don't be all weird. Okay. And make sure you have questions to ask, right? Make sure you have questions to ask. You are correct. Sometimes they will tell you to wait until the end, right? Yeah. Sometimes they will. So again, the HR professionals that I am training, when I go in and I teach HR teams, how to do, how to properly interview, one of the things that I am big on is remember that you too are human. I know that we have a time frame that we need to, live by, but we want, as HR professionals, as recruiters, as hiring professionals. And again, I know not everybody has been part of my training, but that's one of the things that I really do like to recommend. It's like, treat people like humans. Stop acting like they are just a number. And I teach them to also have conversations, because honestly, if I'm having a conversation with you during an interview, I get more out of you. I get more out of the interview. If I make you feel comfortable, I'm getting more than what you probably even came prepared to do. Is a blessing and a curse. but it really does. It really does make a worthwhile interview. But no, that is absolutely true. Okay. So you want to be conversational. Okay. When we are talking about being conversational, I shared with you all to ask questions in between, show your personality, right? But please do not overshare. And if you set your timer, right? And if you've practiced doing mock interviews, you'll start to know if you're oversharing, right? Do not overshare. And these are the things that I have seen people overshare about a little bit too much, right? We had one candidate, they got all the way to the end and they just started oversharing about their bad experience with their previous employer. Okay. And you just want to be mindful about oversharing about your commitments, right? Outside commitments, oversharing about the training that you didn't get from your last job. That's been a common one. People will say, "Oh, well, I did this, but I didn't get any training." Don't overshare, okay? Really try your best to stick it to them, be conversational and not overshare, all right? So I see another question. How many questions at the end are appropriate? Great question. I think it depends on how long you've gone, right? So if the interview has gone for about an hour and they told you it was going to last for about 45 minutes to an hour, you might want to say, hey, I have maybe 2 questions. But if you have 15 minutes left and, they're asking, hey, what other questions do you have? I would definitely say, 3 to 5 is a really great number to have, right? But don't forget, when you are interviewing, it's not just the employer. It's not just a hiring official that's looking. You are also interviewing them. You got to really take your power back, right? You got to take your power back, not in an arrogant way, but know that you are also interviewing. Again, going back to tip number 1, knowing who you are and knowing why you are there. If you know that this is a position that is of interest to you, then you are positioned a little differently. You ask questions a little differently, right? Because you're actually interested in being there. Okay. All right. So we are wrapping up on some of these tips, and I'll go to some of the other questions that I see in the comments. So again, if you have any other questions that you have about the interview process, go ahead and start putting them in the comment box below. All right. So tip number 6. Okay. At the end of the interview, you want to express your interests, okay? Express your interest. And again, I'm just sharing things that will make you stand out. Express your interest in the role, okay? And what I mean by this is you could say something like, you know what? After interviewing with you all, thank you all so much for your time today. I can really see myself in this role and I'm highly interested and looking forward to hearing from you all soon. Right? Just share that you're interested, because one of the worst things for a hiring official is when we contact someone and make an offer and then they're like, oh no, I'm not interested in the role. Right? So again, if you're not interested, and I'm not saying that you should lie, but if you really are interested, say that you're interested, right? Say that you are, because that can kind of help us really highlight you when it's time for us to debrief, right? Especially about all of the different candidates that we met. So you want to showcase your interest. I have a bonus tip. Okay. I have a bonus tip, but I'm only going to share this bonus if somebody can share at least 3 of the tips that I shared so far. Okay. I have a bonus, but only if you can share at least 3 of the tips that I've shared so far. Because I'm telling you, this tip right here, this bonus tip, okay? This bonus tip, it used to be something that just about everybody did, but it is a lost art now, right? It is a lost art. So somebody share 3 tips that I've already shared so far, and I'll share that bonus tip. Okay. So I'll wait for you all to comment with those 3 tips that I've shared so far, and then I'll answer some of the questions that I saw in the chat. So I answered that one already. How many questions at the end are appropriate? If you are a referral, should you bring it up during the interview? Oh, such a good question. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes, I totally would. There are lots of stats there, and hopefully, again, it depends. It depends on that company's, process. But usually, in the application, it would have actually if you were a referral. And then there are some companies too that if you are referring somebody, they want the employee to tell the hiring officials that they've referred someone. So usually hiring officials know that they are referred, but if that was not the case, and even if it is the case, it would behoove you to say yes, you were referred, and share, but not just say, oh, Hennither referred me, but really share something that Hennither shared about the company and or about the position that highlights again your interest and why you would be a good fit for this role. So fantastic question. In fact, we love referrals. We absolutely love referrals, right? It makes our job a lot easier. All right, have another question here. Oversharing. How do you say you're bored, not challenged? Oh, this is good. And looking for growth or something new. I feel like everybody uses yes, everybody does looking for growth. Yeah, yeah. And let me tell you, sometimes we just had a client recently where they're like, I don't necessarily want somebody looking for growth. And here's the reason why. They weren't looking for somebody looking for growth because the role they were looking for office manager, and it's a small employer, and they're like, there's nowhere else to go. Like they can grow within their role, right? But there's no other position titles. So in their mind, looking for growth meant that they were looking for another position title, right? So again, I just wanted to add that caveat. But if it's something that you're bored and you're looking for growth or looking for something new, something that I would say is, again, I don't know if this is true for you, but I would say I have been participating in this in many different trainings and self-learning modules to enhance my skill set in X, Y, and Z. I haven't been able to utilize those new skills that I've acquired in my current role. So I'm really looking for another opportunity where I can take everything that I've already done, but also apply some of the new things that I've learned, right? So you could maybe say that. Okay. Is that helpful? Let me know if it's helpful. Go ahead and put an emoji up and let me know if that was helpful. Okay. So here's something else. I've never had to give the candidate 15 minutes. A blessing if you get 5 minutes. I'll ask if I can email whatever I want allowed to ask due to their constraints. Okay. So I think, yeah. It's about, I think this was around the question about asking questions and how many questions that you have. Yeah. Yeah. If you have, and again, my bonus tip, but I don't know. I guess you all don't want the bonus tip. Guess you all don't want the bonus tip. I might have to do a whole nother live on the bonus tip. Meant to say whatever question I wasn't. Oh, okay. Now I got you. Meant to say whatever question I wasn't able to ask during the interview. Understood. Makes sense. Yep. Hopefully I answered that question. Have a ready answer to tell me about yourself. Do mock interviews. Don't overshare. Okay, got it. All right. We have our 3 tips. We have our 3 tips. All right. So you all better thank, Miss C. Jones 2011, okay? Because she shared the 3 tips, I will give you all our bonus tip. It's an oldie but goodie, but I'm telling you, it makes you stand apart from the rest. That tip is, somebody give me a drum roll. See, this is why I like live, right? Right? Send a follow-up email. Do you know how many people don't send a follow-up email? Like for real. I'm talking about send a follow-up email after the phone interview. Send a follow-up interview, especially after the final interview. Don't be so arrogant that you think you killed it and that they're going to select you, that you don't have to say thank you. My pastor says this all the time. When you thank somebody, when you show gratefulness for what somebody did, it subliminally gives them permission to do it again. right? So I'm not saying that you'll automatically get the job, but I'm telling you, especially those of us that are hiring officials, human resources professionals, hiring officials, we remember you. And if you're not a good candidate for one role, we may remember you for another. I have done that several times. In fact, sometimes when we are recruiting for roles and we know that the number two didn't get it or the number three didn't get it, and we know that we have another position, we'll go back to the number two and number three that did not get the last position and say, hey, you interviewed so well. And we remember those that say thank you. We remember those that are pleasant. We remember those people. Okay. But I'm telling you, it is so critical. I'll give you a real live example. We had a client that we just filled a bookkeeper role. And one of the reasons why that bookkeeper was selected was because it was a hard one. Both candidates were excellent, but one of them sent a follow-up email. One of them sent a follow-up email saying thank you. And that is what set that person apart from the other person. That is the one thing that did it. Right? So when you send your follow-up email, one of the tips that I like to always recommend is that you reference something that was mentioned in the interview. And you all should know this by now, but hopefully at the end of the interview, you're asking questions. I know we talked about that a little bit. You're asking questions at the end, relevant questions, right? But one of my favorite questions that I like to coach folks on is asking people why they are there and what they love about the company that they are now interviewing with, right? So when you ask that question, it's a really good reference point when you are sending a follow-up email saying thank you. Okay. So if then a follow-up email is, something that you can do. Some people I've even seen put, some little cards in there, electronic cards. Listen, we don't have to go to the post office anymore, you all, to send a thank you card. Although I have heard that it's making a comeback. You could just send an email saying, thank you so much for the interview. It makes a big difference. Is this helpful so far? If this is helpful, why don't you go ahead and put an emoji in the chat? Let me know if this has been helpful for you. All right. I made a post about that because I sent a follow-up email after the first email and got a response right away to set. Yeah, I'm telling you. Yeah. It keeps when you send follow-up emails, or even making a follow-up phone call if we've given permission, right? It keeps you top of mind. Listen, when you are applying online, I may have to do a whole, listen, if you are interested in knowing some tips about some inside scoop and tips about the job application process, let me know in the comment. Let me know in the comment section. Because one of the reasons why I don't like quick apply is that it takes the intentionality away from candidates. I know that it's very, oh my gosh, it takes a lot of time to apply for roles these days. But when you are just doing quick apply, it takes the intentionality away, and it removes you from that intentionality of sending follow-up emails after someone says, hey, I'm interested in you, right? Because you are applying to so many roles and you don't remember which one, right? So again, send those thank you messages. I send follow-up emails within 24 hours that is phenomenal. Yes. After 24 hours after the interview, some candidates who I've seen recently, they're sending it right away, right? So, but within 24 hours, I think is absolutely phenomenal, right? It's not a question, but can we talk about professional attire? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I was looking at the time because I want to honor everybody's time. Let me just say this, okay? Because I just did an in-person workshop on this at a local college. Attire is a tricky one in today's society. Now, if it's a virtual interview, you have a whole lot of flexibility. But let me tell you a real live scenario that happened. Many people think that they can just get dressed from the waist up. Well, let me tell you what happened. There was somebody that was interviewing and something fell, so they got up. And when they got up, they showed their PJs. Right? Because they didn't think that they were going to have the need to get up. So my recommendation is that you can never go wrong with business casual, and you can never go wrong with a throwover for women, a throwover or a blazer on top. You can never go wrong with business casual. But if you are interviewing virtually, please do not sleep on the fact that you need to put on something decent from the waist down as well. Okay. Now, if you decide to not wear shoes, that's your jam. Hey, no judgment here. But even when I work from home, even when I'm working virtually, I get fully dressed. I am wearing slippers even right now, okay? But I am fully dressed, right? Because you just never know where you have to move. Now, if you were in person, oh my gosh, literally, we can go on this for another half hour, but I want to honor everybody's time. All I will say is that you can never go wrong with business casual, okay? And if you are uncertain about what business casual really means, I want you to go ahead to Uncle Google. He will give you some phenomenal snapshots about what business casual means. And listen, can I just add this? If you all have any of our newer generation folks in your family, please have them watch this replay, especially this section about dressing appropriately, okay? There's been some shenanigans happening where people are showing up to interviews with Crocs and they are not nurses. Yeah, they're not nurses, right? They're showing up with flip-flops and they're not going to the beach. This is not a beach job. Yeah. So we just want to make sure. And here's the thing. And this is one of the main reasons why my team and I decided to do this, because we got tired of talking about these things behind the scenes. We're not like talking about people. We've literally been burdened. We've been burdened because we're like, man, we know that the reason why somebody's interviewing is because they actually want the role, right? But there's some things, some little tweaks that need to be put in place so we can be in position for the very thing that we have been praying about, that we've been praying for, right? So I just wrote that down as a note to follow up on the next. Yeah, the application process. Okay, good. Yeah, again, if you all want to know about the application process, definitely let me know in the chat. And anything else that you all want to know about, listen, why don't you go ahead and make sure that you subscribe to the Career Image Solutions channel, right? And make sure that you are following us on LinkedIn. And if you have not subscribed to our newsletter, okay, I want you to make sure that you email us at services@career-image.com. Okay, email us there. Okay, if you are not part of our current newsletter, make sure you email us so that way we can make sure we get you on the list. I heard a recruiter say the same thing about quick apply. Absolutely, it's a blessing, but it could really be a curse as well. I have black PJ bottoms on for that reason. You know what? That is a really good tip. If you're going to wear PJs, make it a neutral color, okay? Don't be the ones, you have the colorful ones. You have the smiley face in places. Anyway, I'll leave that alone for another day. I'm just saying. I love that. I love that. Have the black PJs. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, you all, thank you all so much for your time. If you are uncertain about whether or not you need assistance with interviews, this is how you know if you need some interview assistance. If you've been applying for roles and you are not, and you've been getting phone interviews, that means your resume is working. That means great. But if you've been getting phone interviews and or video interviews, but you are not making it to the final interview, that might mean that you need some assistance with maybe doing some mock interviews, some interview prep, okay? Which my team and I will be more than happy to assist you with. So again, you want to email us at services@career-image.com, okay? Another indication is if you've been making it to the final interview, but you're just not getting the role. That is an indication that you might need to do some mock interviews. I would actually just recommend it, okay? Now, there's some differences when you have mock interviews with your friends versus mock interviews with hiring officials that are actually hiring for a living. So again, if you find yourself in that position, why don't you go ahead and email us today so we can go ahead and get you on our calendar to maybe even do some individual personalized interview mock prepping with you and or invite you to our next interview mock prep session that we plan on doing in person, and we will have a virtual component. Okay, I hope that this has been helpful. It has been my plum pleasing pleasure to support you all through tips on acing your interview. I would like to give a shout out to my wonderful team at Career Image Solutions for putting this together. Team CIS, thank you for all that you are doing right now behind the scenes to making this go live. I appreciate all of you, and I hope to see you soon. And until next time, don't forget to command your day. Stay tuned, everybody, and ace that next interview. Have a good one. Thank you all. Bye-bye.